Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is Suspects and Spirits, and I'm your host, Taylor Seraphin. Episode 11, going strong. Let's go, baby. I hope everyone's doing well. I hope you're enjoying this heat weather that we're having. Heat weather. What is that? I'm not, personally. I enjoy the monsoons in the summertime. That is my absolute favorite, but I'm literally melting. And that's because it is hotter than a hoochie coochie out here. Arizona is no joke. I need fall like I need air. I don't think you understand. I need it so bad that I could cry. Like, I want pumpkins. I want pumpkin spice lattes. I want to carve pumpkins. I want to go to a pumpkin patch. I want apple cider, which I can probably just get all the time. And I think I'm just going to keep it around the house just because. But I want fall. I want to cozy up in my sweater and sweatpants and watch horror movies while it rains outside. And unfortunately, in Arizona, usually that rain, that nice, beautiful rain, only happens during the monsoons. And then afterwards, it's sticky as hell outside. Like, it gets so humid. The good thing about the monsoons is that it shuts up the cicadas. If you don't know what a cicada is, they look kind of like a horsefly on steroids, um, and they make this buzzing sound. You know, it's summertime in Arizona when you walk outside and it's all bzzz. That's not bees. Those are freaking cicadas, and they are so loud. My dog likes to try to eat them, but we've tried to tell her not to do that. She's just nosy as hell. She won't listen to us. They're not going to kill her or anything, but I was like, that's a spicy jelly bean. I wouldn't eat that. She's my fur baby, and I love her. I don't know if your guys' kids do sports. Any of you guys listen. Maybe some of you don't have kids, and maybe some of your kids don't do sports. Good call, because yesterday I drove to Ajo, Arizona. I woke up at 3:30 in the morning and drove this child of mine a little over 2 hours to Ajo. I was like, we might as well bring our passports, babe, because we're an hour and a half from Rocky Point. Let's go to Mexico. Let's go have a little vacay. It was real hot, real sweaty out there, but she did great. She has done awesome this whole summer, and she's really enjoying swimming. I was a swimmer too, so I'm glad that we can bond over that and talk about it. It's really fun to see your kids enjoy a sport and also be good at it. But somehow that child stayed up until like 9 o'clock, and I woke her up at 4 a.m. yesterday. She's like a little Energizer bunny, and I will never understand. My body doesn't do that anymore. I am a nap queen, and I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, when can I go back to sleep? I just don't go to sleep. So that's what being a parent's like. It's just constantly being tired and loving your kids so much it hurts. Love them, and I would do anything for them. I really would. So anyways, enough about my life and me. If I sound a little kooky, I'm sorry. I've been batch recording lately. If you don't know what that is, it's where you basically record a bunch of episodes back to back because you have things that you are planning on doing and you won't be able to record. For me, it means the school year is starting. It's about to get real crazy up in here. And I got to get as many episodes recorded as I can before the chaos begins. And I'm excited for the school year to start. I am no good without a schedule. I need a schedule in my life, and having the school year really helps me with that. You know, I have the wake up routine. The kids have their routine. I have my routine. I love routine. I love it. I thrive in it. What was I saying? See, what did I tell you? Well, kooky, cuckoo, choo. Have been batch recording because the school year is starting, and it's a real batch. Let me tell you. Editing will be the death of me. I hate editing with a passion. If I had money to hire an editor, I would. It's just going to be me pulling my hair out, losing my mind every time I have to edit. But that's okay, because this podcast is starting to do really well, and I will not give up simply because I hate editing. It's part of the job. I got to do it, and I will. It'll be fine. Everything will be fine. Are any of us really fine? I don't know. But enough about me. Let's get into our story today. And you know what? We got a good one, you guys. This story is freaking wild. I had never heard of it before, and it's actually a really fun story. So, I know I've done a lot of heavy stuff lately. This one, it definitely goes in the paranormal realm. Remember, this is a paranormal episode, and it's like time travel, glitch in the matrix type thing. And like I said, I am a believer, so don't be coming at me in my DMs and telling me that this was debunked or it doesn't exist because like just let us live in our happy little paranormal bubbles, okay? No more DMs. Yes, I've gotten DMs from people that were like, I hate to break it to you, but they debunked that. And I'm like, I have a podcast and that makes it true. So I'm such a brat sometimes. I actually just don't respond to those. Yeah. I don't block you or delete you or anything, but if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. And I'm going to feel the way I feel. And we all have our feelings. And my feeling is that I'm right. I'm just kidding. I'm not always right. But this stuff makes me happy to research, not the true crime, not that stuff. Oh God. Let's rephrase that. I enjoy paranormal stuff. Okay. I really enjoy it. Don't yuck someone's yum. So today's episode is about oh shit, I'm going to mess up this word. If you guys haven't learned that I mess up words, that's on you. I don't know what to tell you. This is the Dodleston Messages. Happened in the UK. I'm not from the UK, so probably not how you pronounce that. It's spelled DOD. Well, you guys can read. What am I doing? You can read. It's in the title. Okay, that's what we're going to be covering today. Let's get into it. They say, ghosts, they haunt graveyards, old houses, maybe a cursed mirror or two. But what happens when a ghost finds its way through your computer and not like your sleek MacBook or your iPhone, but your clunky ass keyboard smashing, dial up deafening 1980s computer? What if a ghost got in there? What happens when the ghost doesn't just say boo, but it starts leaving you intelligent, articulate messages? This story has all of that, okay? Today we are going to be opening the file on one of the weirdest cases you've probably never heard of. This story today begins in 1984 in the sleepy English village of Dodleston, nestled in Cheshire near the border with Wales. I hope I said all of those words correctly. Now, this is the kind of place where, history lingers in the stone walls and everyone knows the postman's name. Very historic, cute little village. It's the kind of place that you would choose for a quiet life. And that is exactly what Ken Webster did. Ken Webster, a mild mannered economics teacher, had just moved into a small, slightly dilapidated 17th century cottage with his girlfriend Debbie and their friend Nick. The house was old, no doubt, but charming in that like slanted ceilings, drafty windows kind of way. It's really like very cute. The trio was in the process of slowly renovating the home, one creaky room at a time. Now, when they started all this renovation, things subtly started to become a little odd. There were stacks of canned food that would mysteriously move across the kitchen overnight. Furniture seemed to rearrange itself slightly when no one was around, and their pet cat would hiss at empty corners. Trust your pets, guys. But the first moment that made Ken really pause and be like, what is going on, came one afternoon when he walked into the kitchen and saw something unsettling. A pile of cat food tins stacked into a perfect pyramid. No one admitted to doing this. Okay, not Debbie. And Nick was like, wasn't me. And they all started singing that song. They were like, saw me in the kitchen. It wasn't me. The stack was precise, though. It was too precise. It looked like something was playing a game almost. And more importantly, it was impossible given the shape of the cans. I mean, it was weird, but explainable. Maybe Nick was messing around and he stacked the cans. That's what they were thinking. But then came the footprints. Dust had settled on the floor of one of the unused rooms upstairs. When Ken and Debbie walked through, they noticed something strange. Not just footprints, but bare footprints. And each foot had 6 toes. And they didn't just lead from the doorway, they climbed the wall. According to Ken, they traced up the wall and onto the ceiling. He and Debbie were like, what we got here? This is real weird. They were so disturbed and they cleaned the dust and marked the space. But within days, the prince came back. And that's when things started to escalate. And this is when the computer takes the center stage. As part of his teaching job, Ken had borrowed a school computer, a BBC Micro Model B, very popular in UK classrooms at the time. No modem, no internet. It was the 1980s, okay? No way to be connected to anything else. He used it mostly just for lesson planning and word processing. But one afternoon, Ken booted up the computer to find a strange file saved that he hadn't created. The file wasn't labeled in any recognizable way. It was just a jumble of characters. So obviously, he's going to open it, right? Like, me too. I would open it. Like, what is this? We're curious creatures. We're going to open it. And what Ken found in this file was not gibberish. It was a message typed in archaic English. It read, quote, "True are the nightmares of a person that fears. Safe are the bodies of the silent world. Turn, pretty flower, turn toward the sun, for you shall grow and sow. But the flower reaches too high and withers in the burning light." End quote. There was no sender, no date, no way to trace the file's creation, just ancient, cryptic, and poetic words. So imagine for a second borrowing a school computer from 1984. Those things had less memory than your wristwatch. You don't have internet. You don't even know anyone who could mess with it. And then a poem just like appears on the computer, not in your voice, not in your time, just there. And you're like, I did not write this. Very strange, but also so fun and interesting. At first, Ken thought it might be a prank. So he asked Debbie and Nick, of course, and they denied everything. He asked around at school as well, but nobody had touched the computer. And then the messages kept coming, and they began to grow a little personal, you could say. Eventually, the messages started appearing during active sessions while Ken or Debbie were typing, not just files left behind, but like interruptions in their work. And now the messages were being signed, a name, Lucas, with a K, sometimes written as LW, and soon a fuller identity. This ghostwriter, Lucas, claimed to live in the 16th century, around the year 1546, and he believed Ken and Debbie were spirits haunting him. He's like, what is happening? Lucas then described his surroundings. An old cottage in the village of Dodleston, same village, same property, but his timeline. He said, quote, "Why do you have the light box? Do you live in my house? It is a house of linen and bricks. I am confused by your shapes and your words." End quote. He called the computer a light box. I think that's so cute. So yeah, he thought it was some sort of magical tablet. But here's the thing that gave Ken pause. It was the way Lucas wrote. It wasn't just like Shakespeare cosplay. Lucas used obscure grammar, idioms, and spellings that were verified by linguistic historians to be consistent with mid-16th century English. Things that were hard to fake unless you had a deep historical knowledge of that type of writing. And remember, this is the 1980s. You couldn't just Google, how did people talk in 1540? This is so interesting. So let's get into Lucas. Let's get into our ghost friend. As the messages continued, Lucas eventually revealed his real name, Thomas Harden. He said he was once a student at Brasenose College in Oxford and that he was expelled for refusing to disavow the writings of a Catholic mystic during England's religious Reformation. So, of course, Ken investigated. He sent letters to Oxford's archives. No confirmation came back, but the name Thomas Harden did appear in some obscure parish records from the region. So, was this real history? Was it a stroke of luck or just a very well-researched hoax? Ken was still pretty confused, and he became even more confused when eventually a third presence made itself known. A new message appeared, and this time it didn't come from Lucas or Thomas. It came from something or someone claiming to be from the year 2109. And this time, it wasn't friendly. This message said, quote, "You must cease your conversation with Thomas. What you are doing is unauthorized. We are watching," end quote. So this wasn't just a ghost story anymore. There was this man, Ken, living in the 80s, receiving messages from a man in 1546 and then being warned off by an intelligence from over 100 years into the future. What is happening? Who were they? And how were they intercepting messages between two people separated by over 400 years? And what did they want? I told you guys, this is a weird story, right? This is so wild. So Ken started to sort of suspend his disbelief because he was talking to somebody who, if we take this at face value, was living in the year 1546. He had accepted that somehow a primitive word processor was being used as a conduit between their time and his. And it did take Ken some time to accept this. And as Ken was starting to come to terms with all of this, the new messages began to become more hostile. One cold evening in 1985, a new message appeared, one that didn't speak like Lucas, one that felt different again. The syntax was sharper, cold, technical. It said, quote, "We are monitoring your communications. Cease interaction. You have broken protocol. There are consequences," end quote. And this time, there was no name, no kind regards, no tutor poetry, just this sterile, chilling warning. Ken read the message over and over again, trying to figure it out. He was like, who is this? Where is this coming from? The entity would later identify itself only as 2109. So Ken was like, is this a person, a group, a machine? It never clarified specifically, but it spoke with absolute authority and kind of a futuristic detachment that made it deeply unsettling, almost like a robot. Because, right, like it says, what you're doing is unauthorized. We are watching. And then it says, we're monitoring your communications. There are consequences. It sounds like a government robot or something. It's so weird. So as the weeks went on, Ken and Debbie received more communication from 2109. The entity or entities claimed to be time monitors. They told Ken that what he was doing, communicating across time, wasn't meant to happen, that the contact was unauthorized. But then they contradicted themselves. 2109 offered to facilitate the interaction if Ken would agree to help with their research. 2109 said, quote, "You will continue your dialogue with Thomas. We will allow it, but we must also ask you some questions," end quote. It became transactional. Ken was suddenly caught up between a man in the 1500s who thought he was haunted and an AI like presence from the future that didn't seem entirely benevolent. And then 2109 began deleting some of Lucas's earlier messages, which, like, if I was Lucas, I'd be like, Excuse you, that was beautiful poetry that I wrote. Do not delete that. Like, how rude." Other messages that had previously been on the computer were distorted or altered, suggesting that 2109 had the power to edit the timeline of the conversation itself. This whole story is wild. Imagine you're talking to a ghost and someone else comes along and starts censoring the ghost. They're like, "No, sir, no poetry here, not allowed." Like, 2109, calm down. Okay? He's writing poetry. They're having a little bromance. It's fine. Let it happen. It's okay. 2109 needs to chill out. Like, just let them talk. My gosh. So eventually, Ken starts discussing these events with other people because he's like, wow, this is some weird shit. I got to talk to people about this. If my computer started writing me poetry, first of all, I'd be like, thank you so much. Like, that's so nice. And then I would tell all of my friends. I'd be like, come over. We're having a party and we're talking to Lucas. He seems like a fantastic guy. So Ken has started telling everybody, and this bizarre nature of events started to catch the attention of the Society for Psychical Research, the SPR, a real world organization founded in 1882 dedicated to investigating paranormal claims. They were very curious about this whole situation, but also very cautious. In 1985, members of the SPR visited the cottage in Dodleston, I'm just going to say it with an accent, Dodleston, to conduct a series of controlled tests. They sealed the BBC microcomputer in a room with wax seals on the windows and door. Ken was to leave this machine alone with no interaction for days. They were like, okay, let's see. This guy's full of shit, right? We're going to have him leave it alone. He's not touching it. We're leaving it in this room and we'll see what happens. So days later, they returned. And wouldn't you know it, a message had appeared. And this message was written in Lucas's now familiar cadence. Ken was like, that's my buddy Lucas. The message said, quote, I did see thy lock, and thou hast sealed me from my only friends. If thou do not trust me, then I shall leave. End quote. He's so fancy. He is such a gentleman, the way he talks. And he's like, you know what? If you don't want me around, I'll just leave. It's okay. You don't need to shun me. And then he followed it up with a second, more direct note because he was feeling dismissed. He was like, this is really rude. So he said, quote, why dost thou shun me? I am no ghost nor sprite. I am a man, and this place is mine. End quote. So now Lucas is like, no, I'm going to stand up for myself. And good for Lucas. Honestly, good for him. So the SPR was baffled. They were like, what is happening? There were no signs of any forced entry, and the room had remained sealed. Oh, sorry. Light bulb moment. It's clicking now. Wheels are turning. I think they sealed it off with wax because then if somebody went into the room, they would be able to see that it was tampered with. I'm a genius. Watch. That's probably not even why they did it. I don't know, but I think that's probably it, right? If you seal it with wax, you can tell if somebody like opens it, moves it, the wax would be disturbed. That makes sense to me, right? What do you guys think? So some members of the SPR still walked away a little bit skeptical, and others admitted that they just had no explanation at all. And then, in one of the most unexpected turns, Lucas began to talk about writing a book about his experiences. The ghost is like, I'm going to write a book. This is wild. I'm talking to humans from the 1980s with a light box. He's probably telling all of his homies in the 1500s, like, dost thou see this? Thou is wild. I don't know. I don't know. I love to imagine Lucas like chatting with his friends, just talking about a light box. He's like, and then there was this light box. So Lucas claimed that he was going to write this book in his own time in the 16th century, and he would have it hidden so that one day it would be discovered in the future. He hoped it would explain what happened, and to verify that he, Thomas Hardin, remember that was Lucas's real name, that he had really existed and that the correspondence with Ken had happened. Ken, of course, decided he was going to search for it. So he was looking in libraries and archives and bookstores, high and low. He's looking everywhere. Rivers and oceans. Probably not rivers and oceans, but he never found it. It's never been found. Or perhaps, as 2109 later hinted, it had been found, but not by the right people. 2109 was quoted saying, the book exists, but it is not for you. You are not ready. End quote. I imagine Ken is probably the most ready to read that book, the most prepared because of this whole experience. Like 2109, stop gatekeeping. Give him the book. This part of the story just like threw me. I was like, what? A man from 1546 writes a book about a time loop he doesn't understand, then he hides it, and someone in 2109 decides to read it and then hides it again because he's like, oh no, we can't have this. This story is so fun. So naturally, people question the legitimacy of this case. I mean, some of you listening right now are probably like, yeah, right, Ken's a quack, whatever. So Ken Webster, did he fake it? A lot of people have questioned this. It's a legitimate question. Was it a clever literary performance? Was it an elaborate LARP? Was he into LARPing? And this was like a really cool new way to LARP? I don't know. Skeptics point out that the messages were always typed, that there were no photos, no third-party recordings, and that only Ken, Debbie, and Nick were the ones consistently present during any messages, which, again, that's why I would have all my friends over. That's why I'd be like, hey, you got to check this out. Like, you guys got to come over and meet my friend Lucas. He lives in my computer. He's from 1546. He talks a little funny, but, like, he's really cool. And maybe 2109, too, if they're, like, being nice. Now, other theories have come about. Some believe it was a psychological projection, similar to automatic writing, if you guys have ever heard of that. That's where a person subconsciously creates messages while in a trance like state. But this mostly happens with like psychics. So if they would have to think that Ken is psychic then, because usually automatic writing, like Lorraine Warren used to do that. She was claimed to be able to do automatic writing and she would draw as well. Because usually somebody is in a trance when they're doing it and they're channeling messages. But automatic writing is typically seen more in like the paranormal community. So if they're saying that that's one of the theories, then Ken would have to be channeled with spirit in some way or another. Other theories suggest poltergeist activity, but obviously it would need to have some kind of unprecedented level of intelligence and intent. Usually poltergeists though are just like they're like cats. They're all fuck this book and they throw it across the room. They like knock things off. You're drinking your water and they just knock it out of your hand. That's more poltergeisty to me. I guess anything's possible, right? And then there are, of course, the people who look at technical explanations, suggesting that, somebody might have hidden custom code in the machine's memory. But this theory collapses under some scrutiny. The BBC Micro had no modem, no connected hard drive, and no memory that persisted through power cycles. And tech experts who examined it said that they found nothing unusual in its files. So now let's talk a little bit about the linguistic analysis and if you could fake that, right? Because the messages from Lucas were very Shakespearean, very of the time of the 1500s. So let's talk about that. One of the strongest arguments for the authenticity of the messages comes from the linguist who analyzed Lucas's language. Like I said before, it wasn't just ye old English. The syntax, the spellings, the word usage, they were all consistent with late Middle English grammar, something not easily replicable without formal training or like a deep scholarly research. Now, some other people were like, well, Ken's a teacher. He knows things. He could totally write like that. Ken was an economics teacher. Not a historian, not a language expert. And this was 1984, you guys. The kind of linguistic resources you'd need weren't even readily available, especially not in small town England, in the tiny village they lived in. Others question, could it have been a team effort? Were Nick, Debbie, and Ken all in on it together? I mean, possibly. But again, to what end? Like, what was the purpose? Just to get famous? Ken didn't even monetize the story. He didn't go on a world tour. He did quietly, very quietly release a book, The Vertical Plane, which stayed mostly under the radar until the internet era came about and then people found it. So, I mean, if this was a hoax, it wasn't for fame and it wasn't for profit, even. He didn't really even make money on this book. What we do know is that for nearly 2 years, Ken Webster and Debbie communicated with Lucas, who, Thomas Harden, as he finally revealed, across a centuries wide chasm through the hum of an old BBC micro. The messages were inconsistent, sometimes weeks apart, sometimes days, and they ranged from personal reflections to theological debates to cautious questions about modern life. Lucas was curious about the world. He was confused by light boxes and terrified by their moving pictures. He was deeply skeptical of technology. I still think it's so cute that he called them light boxes. It sounds like something a little kid would say. And then one day, the messages just stopped. Just like that, as quickly as they started, they stopped again. And Lucas wrote his final farewell. The last known message from Lucas wasn't dramatic, it wasn't poetic, it was simple, almost resigned. The message said, quote, "Farewell, friends. I must go now. I do not know if I will see thee again." End quote. And that was it. No warning, no explanation, no follow-up. Ken waited and waited. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months, but nothing more came. Had Lucas lost contact? Had 2109 silenced him? Had history simply caught up? Ken doesn't know. And unfortunately, I don't think we ever will either. It's kind of sad though, right? Like that's kind of a bummer. Imagine making contact with someone from the 1500s, becoming kind of like, a pen pal across time travel pen pals, and then they just stop writing to you. Kind of sad. Poor Ken. 2109 did leave parting words as well. They left one final message. Ken got a little excited to see a message, but then he realized it wasn't from Lucas. And this one was different. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't cold. In fact, it read almost like a blessing or maybe even a warning, depending how you read it. It said, quote, "You have done well. There is more to come, but you will not know it. What is time but a measurement? We exist as you do, but not as you think. Your role in this ends now. Take comfort. You have helped." End quote. And that was it. 2109 said, "Peace out. Peace out, Girl Scout. I'm done. No more threats. Have a good life." And Ken never received another message after that. The BBC Micro was returned to his school, and the house eventually sold, and life just moved on. So to me, I would be very frustrated with this. I don't know. It's like when a book or a movie just really ends abruptly with really no closure. Some M. Night Shyamalan shit where it's just bam, it's done. No closure and no sequel. Just like have fun. Have fun guessing what happens next. In the book, you guys, that Lucas claimed to have written, still never found. I want someone to find the book. You got to find it. Now, there was one message I didn't tell you guys about. It was a later message throughout the 2 years that Lucas had written, and it gave kind of a strange update. He said that he was leaving for Bristol and would finish the book there. That was the last place he ever mentioned to Ken. So, some years later, Ken claimed he found a single reference in an obscure document to a T. Hardin, who had been active in Bristol during the 1550s. Was it Thomas or was it a coincidence? I mean, I'm sure Hardin is a common last name, but as of today, no confirmed copy of this book has been located. That is the only thing Ken has ever found in relation to this Thomas Hardin or Lucas. And here's where things get strange again. Some of the online theories believe that the book may have been found but buried in academic archives or misclassified or maybe even confiscated by government bodies. And if that sounds paranoid, you're right, but the government doesn't tell us everything. 2109 even said themselves that the book existed and explicitly told Ken he wasn't allowed to read it. So it either never existed at all and this was a hoax, or someone decided it was too important to share, that it needed to be kept hidden. To this day, no one knows what really happened at that little cottage in Dodleston. Ken Webster never monetized the story beyond the very modest book that he wrote, mentioned earlier, called The Vertical Plane. He just quietly faded from the spotlight, which is kind of strange in itself, considering how completely bananas this story is. But there are generally 4 camps of thought about this whole situation. The first is that it was a very elaborate hoax, that Ken and Debbie made it up, maybe as a creative project, maybe to mess with friends. But for 2 years, guys, that's a long time. And with like linguistic accuracy and no obvious motive. And why include 2109 at all? I don't get it. I don't understand the whole hoax thing. But the second theory is that it was manifestation or psychological projection, like I mentioned earlier. Could Ken have subconsciously typed the messages through automatic writing? Could Lucas be a product of disassociation or a fractured part of Ken's psyche? That one's an interesting theory. The third is that it was a poltergeist or spiritual entity. Some believe Lucas was a ghost or at least a trapped energy of some kind, using the computer as a conduit. The 6-toed footprints thing is weird to me. Maybe their home was haunted and maybe there was some kind of conduit with the computer, but I don't think Lucas had 6 toes. I feel like that's something you would tell your pen pal. Like, hey, dost thou know I have 6 toes? That would be I would share that on a first date. Like, that's a real interesting fun fact about yourself. Unless that's just common in the 1500s. I don't know. Did we just evolve into only 5 toes? I have no idea. But that to me is a strange little piece of this story. Maybe their home was haunted, and maybe this whole thing with Lucas was entirely separate. Who knows? These are fun theories, though. I'm liking this. The fourth theory, the final one I came across, was an actual time slip or dimensional contact, like, time travel. This one, people say, is the least likely, but also the most fun. Maybe Lucas was real and 2109 was real. and Ken just got caught in a temporal fault line between dimensions or timelines. A moment where technology accidentally became a portal. I believe in portals. I believe in all of that. I mean, you can't tell me aliens don't exist and you can't tell me ghosts don't exist. Now you can't tell me that computers can't be a conduit for people from the 1500s and 2109. It's fun to believe this stuff. And like I said before, after my experience at the Zach Baggins Museum, Bagels, whatever, I have a very different perspective. I was already a believer before, and now it's very hard to tell me otherwise. I mean, maybe time travel really happens. You guys have heard of astral projecting? People do that. People have been trying to prove time travel forever. Forever. I mean, it's always been a really interesting concept. And of course, I believe in stuff like that. That's like why I have this podcast. It's just fun and fascinating. What we know for sure about this story is that the BBC Micro was offline and incapable of the kind of messages seen. Experts were unable to locate any technical trickery. The linguistic accuracy of the messages matches patterns not commonly known, and Ken Webster didn't seem to gain much from the story at all. We also know that no other case like this has ever been recorded in quite the same way. Lucas just completely vanished. 2109 completely vanished, and the messages stopped. So, I mean, I know what I think. What do you guys think? Was it a ghost story, a digital seance, or a lonely teacher projecting a fantasy? Do you think a scholar was reaching through time with nothing but faith and a light box? I mean, if you guys ever find yourself in a little cottage in the UK built before the 17th century, maybe whip out that old word processor, boot it up, and see what comes through. If you guys have theories, I want to hear them. I always want to hear your theories. Send me a message on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. And if you enjoyed this little mysterious time travel journey we went on, make sure to leave a review and share it with your fellow cryptid-loving, ghost-believing, what the hell did I just hear kind of friends. And if you have a weird little story to share about maybe a glitch in the matrix, Mandela effect, send it in to me. I want to read it for you. I'll read it on the pod. Just let me know if I can use your name or not. You can send them through the website. You can send them to me in a message. Doesn't matter. Whatever is easiest for you. And if you also want to find that book that Lucas wrote, let me know. And we'll go together. We'll go search for it. Indiana Jones, that shit. We're going to be all national treasure trying to look for the book. So, yeah, I mean, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this story of the Dodleston Messages. Feel free to do some research of your own. It's pretty interesting. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day or your evening. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And as always, remember to trust your lizard brain. And you can probably trust Lucas too. Maybe not 2109, but you can trust Lucas. Until next time, goodbye.